Alright, BobalosRex here. And today's video is actually an interesting one, and I may actually get a good thumbnail for it at some point, but as you can already tell from the title, it's a video about very rare loot in MMOs, and what parts I like, what parts I don't, and I'm kind of comparing some recent topics in WoW and Diablo 4. So let's get into it. Now I'm going to bring up a post, and as you can see here, I got some stuff pulled up, but here, let's bring up the post here. So let's talk about the Evoker Legendary in WoW and how it works compared to some other loot, how I feel about that, and let's get into it. So recently it's been confirmed the Evoker Legendary only drops from your highest difficulty kill each week. And it was confusing, people were confused, but essentially, to sum it up, you essentially have one chance a week to get it. So you kill them on normal. If that's your highest you can do it once. That's your best chance. Kill it on heroic, that's your best chance. Kill it on LFR, that's your best chance. And or if that is your only means to kill him. So essentially, it turns out there aren't multiple avenues to reroll for it. So you can't do normal and then try LFR. No. That's not how it works. And if the numbers are calculated correctly, which would mean statistically doing one first and then the other doesn't increase your chances at all. You just do normal and you don't have to do LFR. Your odds are the same. And this has started a big discussion, and I really wanted to talk about this. So, in regards to the Evoker Legendary, is it a very rare item? Yes. Even though people will be like, oh, well, it drops in LFR, is it very... It counts as very rare loot, and I'm going to be real with you. Because me and another Evoker in my guild have been trying since like week 2, or week 3, maybe week 3, and we still haven't gotten it. And at some point, that's how RNG is, you know? But some people are trying to downplay Evokers complaining about it and be like, oh, well, at least you got a legendary. Well, let's talk about that. One of the things very rare loot in WoW does that's different in Diablo 4, and I actually have two different opinions on these two means of loot. But let's continue talking about the Evoker Legendary. So I have some notes here. So remember last year with the Razageth bow. It's very rare loot, and it was pretty much hunter weapon. Hunter weapon then, hunter weapon with Sylvanas bow, and we'll talk about that. And then there's also the very rare trinkets, which lots of classes could need, and that means a lot. One of the difference between the very rare trinkets, the very rare bow of last tier, and the trinkets of this tier and last tier, is the fact that you can get those in your vault. The Evoker Crystal cannot be obtained in the vault, and now in the recent tier you can run lower difficulties to try to get the items, whereas it turns out the Evoker Legendary, you can't really run the lower difficulties to get the item, because once you ran heroic, you ain't getting it this week, you know? And with the Evoker Legendary, it's a powerful progress tool, because one of the things in WoW is endgame is group content. Endgame in WoW is group content, so stuff that buffs the group overall is a good thing. And this Legendary does buff the group because it does come with a buff system. It also bumps up the Evoker's damage, of course it does, so of course Evokers want that. And I think it's a pretty sizable increase. which is why at a certain point it's going to become mandatory. And that's that is the root problem. Is after a certain point in time, the Evoker Legendary, because of its power spike and because of how it works, and going forward in the expansion, it is going to be a mandatory item for Evokers. And when we're talking about RNG like this, once it becomes mandatory, it's going to be a problem. Alright, if they plan to increase the drop rate, that would be great going forward. And I'm trying to be unbiased here as an Evoker player. I know I'm biased towards this increased drop rate, but I'm trying to talk about it in regards to loot, because the same thing happens with trinkets. The longer the tier goes on, the more the trinkets are required. Time and mandatoriness of certain items, there's a chart that dictates that, and at a certain point, with how long a patch has been out, you're going to need the item on the class if it's that big of a deal. Same thing with the Sylvanas bow. Hunters were hurting for that bow. For tiers, for multiple tiers, because the thing about legendaries in WoW, well, before, other than Legion legendaries, which is another interesting thing, is it is expansion defining for that class most likely. Your class gets a legendary, alright, I'm using it this expansion, right? It's a big deal. You know, and one of the things is with the Evoker Legendary compared to the Sylvanas bow, is the Evoker Legendary comes with a quest chain and crafting requirements. So I may be more fine with the low drop rate if it was just the item, but it's not only just the item, but a whole quest line around it, which I think is cool. I also think it's cool that the first mythic kill had to happen for it to unlock. I think that's great. I think all the things that were involved with this Evoker Legendary have been great, other than this drop system and the rarity of it at this point, because I am hurting for this Legendary, and I know other Evokers are, and you may hear the shout from a top Valdraken all the time, but let me tell you, there's still Evokers out here hurting. Alright? And like I said, with rare trinkets, those are also mandatory, but you can get them in the vault. And with the new system they talked about where reducing tier and increasing the drops of other stuff, that's probably going to increase the amount you see these very rare trinkets. And I would like to see something implemented to help the Evoker Legendary drop. And that's why in WoW, and I'm going to talk about this in the Diablo one, in regards to chase items, because of the nature of WoW as an MMO and in-game content, and how classes work and how certain items can be defining for a class, it's hard to put power behind chase items. Alright? Because at a certain point in WoW, like I was talking about, as time goes on, these items become mandatory. Alright? And that's one of the things I want to talk about. Now, let's move over to Diablo here. So, it was recently told how to obtain the 6 rarest uniques in Diablo 4. Doombringer, the Grandfather, Melted Heart of Selig, and Dariel's Visage, Harlequin Crest, and Ring of the Starless Skies. They can drop from level 85 plus enemies. You can get them anywhere you can get a regular unique. They always drop at 820 eye power, and we currently have only 6 of them in the game, and they're really rare. And this has started a big whole discussion about these uniques and how rare they are and what's the point of these items if they're that rare, blah blah blah, and people have been losing their mind over this. And my opinion of these, you may be thinking, oh, he wants the Evoker Legendary drop rate increase, so he's going to say they should increase these. I really like these, actually. I actually really like how these are implemented, and let's discuss why. So, in Diablo, I've looked that up. So, in PoE, there's this mirror item that's super rare, and it essentially gets you Abyss item if you use someone who's like a mirror service. I'm not really into PoE. I don't know that stuff. So I can't comment on that really. But in D2, I looked up, there was this Tyrael's Might item that was also super rare and super powerful. And I'd like to talk about these items because I actually think these are good chase items. And that works really well in Diablo. And I don't think this kind of system would work really well in WoW. But let's talk about that. So, these rare items, let's just say, here, let's bring up the tweet. They're super busted. They are super busted, alright? I mean, look at this. Boom, shadow damage, crit damage, insane. Freaking consecutive core skill, poison nova. Freaking, in addition, gain +4 ranks to all skills. These are OP busted items that are freaking big, huge, rare chase items. And if you got one, let alone two on a character, that character is like, yeah, what's up? I'm freaking a badass. And I actually think these items are cool, and I think they should stay as rare as they are. Because the thing about these items and the Evoker Legendary is the Evoker Legendary becomes mandatory after a certain amount of time. Because of how rare and OP these items, and because of the nature of this game. Because Diablo's more of a solo player experience, in my mind. It's about grinding, building a character. You don't grind and build a character around these items because they're so... The odds of them dropping are so low, no one's like, I'm going to build around these items. So they don't become a part of the build. The game isn't designed around you having these items as a requirement. They're just fun items to have in, to be like, oh my god, I hit the lottery. Oh my god, I got a grandfather, I hit the lottery. Boom, boom. And those kind of items I think are great. They're OP, they're super rare, and they never become a requirement because of how Diablo works as a game. So in Diablo's case, I really like how these work. I think these are great. And in WoW, I don't think chase items are good that work like this. Items in WoW and gearing is core. And you can say gearing is core in Diablo, but the difference is in Diablo, it's about the journey. In WoW, at a certain level in endgame, because it's about group play, you need to have the items you need to be the best you can be at a certain point, so you can push and help your group. Now let's get into this because I wanted to compare some stuff. So the extreme is happening in both of the... I want to talk about the extreme in both cases, right? So people for the Evoker Legendary have begun to level Drakthir, then get them geared up to run LFR, and then run LFR, they don't get it, they delete the character and redo it. That is the level of degeneracy people are going to for this Evoker Legendary. Is it a majority of players? No. I've considered it, but it is a lot of work, and I don't think a lot of people are going to do it. But that is the degenerate behavior to the extreme to get this item. Now let's compare it. What is the degenerate behavior to get this item? Play the game like normal. And grind nightmare dungeons. That's it. That is literally the same. That is the point of the game. That is intended. The extreme to get these, very much not intended. So I just wanted to bring that to the forefront because I do think it's very interesting how people are talking about these items, and I think people are trying to compare mandatory items in WoW to fun chase items in Diablo. Where I see fun chase items in WoW, I see it like titles, transmog, and rare mounts are chase items in WoW. Okay? Whereas in Diablo, it's these boss ass freaking unique items. Because the main thing about Diablo is getting sparkly loot. And in a game that's about getting sparkly loot, you have to have these really rare items. Whereas WoW, let's be real, we know the true endgame of WoW is fashion. So you put the chase items in the true endgame. The endgame of Diablo is grinding for rare loot. Chase items are rare loot. Endgame of WoW is transmog, fashion, and style. Chase items should be rare mounts and stuff like that. Because I actually am a fan of... I'm fine with RNG mounts. Do some of them get too crazy? Yes. But that is where they put some of their difficulty, and those are chase items. Like, Invincible is a chase item. Let's be real. It is. You know? Because it's not it doesn't become mandatory. You know, that mount has never become mandatory. Should people be able to get it in a decent time frame? I mean, maybe. I mean, people are still going it after years and years. Maybe that's excessive. But that's where chase items in WoW belong, in my mind. And this is all my opinion. Remember, this is all my opinion. This is just a discussion. Because I've been seeing people talk about this thing, and it had me thinking about people talking about this thing, the Evoker Legendary, and it had me really thinking about rarity of items and stuff in the two different games, and I wanted to compare the two. You know, here's the thing. I put this on my paper. Shiny Pokemon. Having full shiny Pokemon, they're statistically rare. But shiny Pokemon are chase items, chase things in a game. And that's kind of what these are. These are the shiny Pokemon. You get these uniques, you're like, oh my god, I got a shiny Rayquaza. You know? Whereas this, I think at some level, Blizzard thinks this may have been a chase item. Maybe they don't think that. I just wanted to talk about it. I think people's biggest problem with these is they're looking at it through a WoW lens, because Diablo 4 is marketed as an MMO, but it's not about group play. When it comes to legendaries like this, at a certain level, group play comes into play, and you as a player need these very rare items. And for the Evoker Legendary, I think they've gone too far in making it too rare, and they should increase the drop rate a little bit. Hopefully they do, maybe in the next patch, and eventually I guess I'll get it, I hope, but man, it's been hurting. I've been hurting for it. So I'm not too upset if they don't increase the drop rate. I just wanted to compare these two topics. Give evokers that haven't got this some slack. They're right to complain. People who don't have legendaries this tier, you got very rare trinkets. Maybe next expansion you'll get a legendary. Hopefully you get it early and you're not the one waiting for the drop. Because as I've shown, there's a line graph between how long the content has come out and at what point this item becomes mandatory. You know? But yeah, that's been a discussion about rare loot in MMOs, my thoughts on it, where I think Diablo does it right, where I think WoW, where I think chase items in WoW belong, and where I think rarity of some things needs to be adjusted in my mind. And that's that, I think. I think I got everything on my paper. You know, required items versus chase items. You know, what's the degenerate behavior that comes about from the different rarities and how they work. I really think they got this wrong with how the Evoker Legendary works. I'm gonna say it. I know I've been like not really saying it, but yeah, I think this whole one chance a week thing is really busted to me. At least with Sylvanas' bow, you could try it on the different difficulties and you just have a less powerful version. But this is ridiculous. I thought I had an extra chance on LFR, and it turns out you don't. And then you got a whole profession quest. It's wild. It's wild. But yeah, that's been my discussion of very rare items in WoW and Diablo and the comparisons. Bad, good, and that's my opinion. Thank you for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye-bye.